When crops get too hot, they fail. For thousands of years, human agriculture has relied on a very simple reflex to solve this problem. If the sun beats down harder, we just pump in more water. This reflex is how we currently protect the 4 foundational pillars of our global diet: wheat, maize, rice, and barley. As global temperatures rise, these crops become highly vulnerable to heat stress, which leads us to the prevailing assumption in both policy and the agricultural industry today. The belief is that as the planet warms, we can simply adapt by expanding our engineered irrigation networks. We are treating a rapidly warming planet as a massive but manageable logistical challenge, one that we can solve with enough pipes, high-capacity pumps, and relentless engineering. This survival plan relies entirely on the assumption that Earth possesses an infinite, constantly replenishing supply of fresh water to draw from. To figure out if we can actually water our way out of extreme heat, researchers had to map the entire planet's agricultural network and run it against future climate projections. They pulled historical crop records from the UN's Food and Agriculture Organization and cross-referenced them with the CMIP6 climate models, the standard datasets used to predict future global temperatures. When you finally run the global supply and demand numbers through these models, the math reveals a hard ceiling on our ability to adapt. Let's start with the current best-case scenario for global warming, a 1.5 degrees Celsius increase above pre-industrial levels. This is the baseline we need to calculate future water demand. This chart shows the exact irrigation expansion required to keep our staple crops alive at that temperature. We would need a 13% global increase in irrigation. That equals 25 million hectares of newly watered farmland. To put the physical scale of that into perspective, you are looking at building new water infrastructure across an area of land roughly the size of the United Kingdom. Surviving a 1.5-degree world requires a monumental engineering effort, but on paper, it remains a mathematically possible undertaking. Now, let's pivot the simulation to a 3-degree warming scenario. Based on current global emissions, this is our business-as-usual trajectory. Looking at this line graph, you can see the exponential jump in water demand required to keep crops yielding at 3 degrees. We suddenly need a 47% global expansion, rocketing upward to hit a massive 94 million hectares. At 3 degrees of warming, the raw volume of required water completely breaks the curve, outpacing any normal infrastructure scaling we are capable of building. This is where we hit the physical supply limit. The simulation factors in the maximum threshold of Earth's available replenishable freshwater. And here is the study's most critical finding on this chart. Only 60% of the croplands needing water at these higher temperatures can actually be irrigated sustainably. That leaves an immediate, devastating consequence for the remaining 40%. Attempting to water these fields will actively drain local aquifers faster than rain can refill them, generating acute water scarcity. Human demand has officially exceeded the planet's physical supply. This mathematical reality makes total agricultural adaptation impossible. This 40% water deficit will not be distributed evenly across the globe. The impacts will be heavily concentrated and highly unequal worldwide. If we look at the localized data, this heat map identifies specific, highly stressed pockets where irrigation demand most drastically outstrips the local freshwater supply. These regions will hit their absolute water limits and experience catastrophic failure long before the global average does. When the water simply runs out in these zones, the physical reality is total ecosystem failure. Crops wither and the soil degrades beyond repair. A 3-degree world guarantees these rolling, localized agricultural collapses, and there is no amount of engineering, pumping, or pipeline construction that can prevent it. So we have to look at the 1.5-degree climate target through an entirely different lens, based exclusively on this global water data. The 1.5-degree climate target represents the absolute physical and biological limit of our agricultural infrastructure. It delivers a final verdict on adaptation as a long-term strategy. Pumping more water is only a temporary bridge, not a permanent solution, because our planetary supply is strictly fixed. We must actively prevent a warmer world, because if we try to just adapt to the heat, we will quickly find that we have simply run out of water to buy ourselves more time.